Kia ora internet. I've been making bunting. Diversity Fest is coming up at work, so as part of that a workmate and I have decided to make a lot of rainbow bunting. There's a lot of tutorials on the internet about how to make bunting, so this is not original in any way whatsoever, but I thought I'd show you the process anyway. Most of those tutorials will tell you to use a nice layer cake and with all the rainbow colours, and it's 10-inch squares of very expensive fabric, and especially layer cakes are quite hard to get here, so layer cakes are really expensive in New Zealand. Much as I love the diversity work that I do in my job, I don't love it enough to give away my expensive fabric for it. So we'll put the layer cake aside, and instead we went and bought from Spotlight some really cheap $3.99 a metre, I think it's Vilene or something, really rubbish fabric, and cut it into approximately 10-inch squares. Some of them are a bit smaller or a little bit bigger because, you know, it doesn't actually matter. The thing about bunting is it's not a quilt. It doesn't have to be perfect fabric, it doesn't have to be accurate. It's just there to be pretty colours and fun. So here's the process on how we made it. So this is ridiculously easy. All you need to do is fold the square in half, and then you're going to stitch along one side of it. You don't even need to worry that much about getting a perfect 1/4 inch, because really this whole thing is so forgiving. I'm going to do a little back stitch at the start and end of each one, just because they are going to be turned inside out, so there'll be a bit of pressure on those ends. Then I'm going to take each of those triangles you've made and turn it inside out. And I've just been using the end of a paintbrush to poke out the point a little bit. Simple as that. So once you've turned the triangle inside out, you move it round so the seam aligns on the back, so you've got like a kite shape. Just iron that flat, and then you take the flappy bit at the top and fold it down. Give that a wee press, and then tuck the flap inside, and that makes a nice tidy pennant shape. And this raw edge along here is going to be inside the binding strip. Just sewing lots and lots of strips together. I'll probably cut this incredibly long strip down into shorter lengths of bunting once I put the bunting on. But I don't know really how long I want each strip to be yet, so just make it as long as possible for a start. Definitely making this up as I go along. Okay, very important lesson. When your sewing machine hiccups, check what's going on, because about halfway through sewing all those strips together, the machine made a funny noise and the thread looped a little bit, and I thought, it'll just be a knot on the back, won't be a problem because it's going to be all sewn inside anyway, so who cares if there's a wee knot. And I carried on and I sewed all the rest of the strips together, and then I realised that the bobbin thread had broken way back when that knot happened, and so I'd sewn all those strips without actually sewing them. So I'm going to do them all again now. I've really got no idea what I'm doing here, but I think if I just press the sides into the middle, I should get something that will work like bias binding but not be on the bias, because it's all going to be a straight line, so I don't need it to be on a bias. This could take forever to do though. There are fancy tools you can get to do this. Of course I don't have any fancy tools. Just like make it up as I go along. That's working quite well. It's going to take me forever to do the full length of the strip, but that's okay. So I think in theory what I can do is just sit each pennant inside the binding like that and just stitch along there, and that should make nice bunting. I'm going to use what one of the tutorials I followed suggested and just leave quite a short end on the end, because you can attach string or something to that to tie it up. You don't need to waste fabric on having a big long strip that you can tie up. I think I might make it a little bit longer than that. That should be enough. And I'll just sew down the strip and see how it goes. And then I'm just going to keep adding these in rainbow order. I'm just running about a, I don't know, couple millimetres, 1/8 of an inch, whatever, along the edge here. It's not really critical as long as I'm catching both edges of the binding and the pennant itself, then should all be good. It's really not a high accuracy project. Well, there we have massive piles of bunting and more bunting that I've actually folded up nicely. And then when I ran out of the fabric I was using for making the binding, here's some done with bias binding that I just had some random, it's horrible colour, but it was some random I had in there. If you're going to use bias binding, I would suggest getting the wide stuff, because this wasn't quite wide enough, and there's a few places where the edge of the pennant didn't get caught up by the bias binding, so I had to do, I don't know if you can see this, I had to do some zigzag stitching along the edge to catch in the bits that I'd missed. So definitely bias binding worked, but get the wide bias binding, not the standard stuff, but this was just some I had. I also used some of the offcuts to make some smaller pennants, which I've just attached to some the tape stuff that was wrapped around a fat quarter bundle or something that says motor all over it, so it must have been a fabric bundle of some sort. It's pretty, it decorates my sewing room a bit more. And now I've just got to fold up the rest of this bunting tidily so I can take it into work, because Diversity Fest starts this week and we've got a event on Tuesday night which the rainbow groups are going to have a stall at, so I need to make sure the bunting's all ready for that. I hope you've enjoyed this sort of tutorial, and don't forget to do all those nice internety things like liking and subscribing and leaving comments. And if you're in Christchurch, come along to UC's Diversity Fest. Bye, Internet.